What's going on, guys? Desi here. I want to go over today's session and let's get straight into it by talking about our bias going into today. So we were obviously looking for higher, as I mentioned in our commentary session. I was like, we are not looking for lower because why? We are in a 4-hour bullish fair value gap. You do not want to look too short when we're in such a higher time frame PD array. That's obviously a bullish gap. So I was telling everyone, look for longs here. We will obviously look for shorts if we violate this gap, but we didn't. There was no short-term move that we could look for downside, right? Because this 4-hour gap, they get the wick. Now, what I noticed and why this PM session was so clean is because we had a bearish 1-hour fair value gap here, right? So we had a bearish 1-hour fair value gap, and I told everyone, I'm like, if this goes inverse, we are going to continue with our bullish bias. So as you guys can see, right at 10 a.m., 30 minutes after close, we flipped this gap and turned into an hourly inverse. So now when you put your pieces together, we have a hourly inverse. We also have a bullish 4-hour gap that is being respected. So this is why I had such a strong bias to the upside for the rest of the day. So the trade that I'm going to go over is going to be our PM session trade. So let's go ahead and get right into that. Let's delete this. So what I was watching, right, was some areas of sell side to get taken out. So I had this as my internal low on NQ that I was watching for sell side, and I marked out the current high that we made during our lunch hour for our buy side targets. Now, what I noticed and what I want is a area of sell side to get swept and then have some SMT. So if you guys look at ES, we had multiple 1-minute lows stacked here. Right here on ES. So I was watching for this area to get swept and possibly form some SMT down here with NQ to move higher. YM is not as important on non-news days, right? It kind of does its own thing. So in terms of SMT with no news, you want to look at ES and NQ versus YM. So let's keep playing this and let's see what kind of reaction we got. Right at 102, we started kind of just drawing wicks down here, right? But it was not enough displacement. There's no fair value gap for me to actually take the trade, so I was still waiting until we got a solid fair value gap formed for our move to back to the upside as an inverse. Kept playing, no trades, nothing yet, right? Nothing that kind of meets my criteria for a trade until this displacement here. Now, when this displacement happened, I was keeping in mind, is there any SMT forming? You guys can note this wick here from 1152, and you guys can see NQ fails to put in a low. So at that same low, I was interested on ES. Did we go lower on ES and then hold that low on NQ? And that's exactly what we did. We had our bullish SMT. So now this is getting set up to meet my criteria for a trade. We're sitting in an hourly inverse that's bullish. We're sitting in a 4-hour gap that's getting a good reaction, right? This is our lunch high, and look at all of this low resistance liquidity built up on NQ, and we even have relative equal highs right here. So our fair value gap is going to be drawn right here. Let's see how this plays out. We are still moving lower. There's no reason for us to long yet. We're still rejecting this gap, but the SMT is holding. I was making sure that if that SMT does not hold, I'm not going to look for this trade no more. But as you guys can see, it is holding still. And now we're just waiting for this inverse to form. That's all we're doing. We're waiting for this inverse to form. Still hasn't formed. Still hasn't formed. And note what we do right before this move. Look at all these lows that are stacked. NQ takes out some internal lows right before the move up. So now let's look at the candles after this. You guys can see how quickly we displaced. And there is your inverse gap. There's your long position. You can stop could be below the low at the inverse gap. When we have a displacement candle like this, I like moving my stop at the low of the displacement candle. This could be your take profit one up here, and then your session highs here, right? And if you want to be safe, you can move your stops even lower. You'll still catch a very nice risk to reward trade. And let's see how this plays out. A very, very quick reaction when all of our criteria is, lines up with our trade. And then we kind of just respected all of our PD arrays, and we drew into those highs as promised. So, same thing over and over again. SMT inverse gap, 4-hour gap held. So there's a higher time frame PDRA. There's lower time frame inversion. There's a lower time frame SMT as well. And if you guys look at the hourly, I want you guys to note this too. Let's go to ES. While this is happening, while we're kind of just chopping in our 1 hour inverse gap, you guys can see what NQ was pretty much putting in a low or a high entire time. You could use your body SMT for this, and you can see that ES was putting in a low. So we had body bullish SMT on ES and NQ as well, which even made my bias go even stronger in terms of I was so confident that we're going to get a move to the upside. And obviously, you guys know we ran all the way into our all-time high moves today. Very clean moves in our PM session, and that is the trade that we caught while I was on live with Brian. So I hope this helps. If you guys have any questions, leave them in the comments or in the Discord. Always willing to help you guys, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.